It's the Dev Friday Show with Mark and Tim.
It is the Dev Friday Show. It's the first Dev Friday Show of this year. I think I've had everything recording here. I have no idea what's going on because it's been so long since we've done this.
Too long. Too long.
Somehow we're here.
Somehow. Back again.
And it's the same bumper. I play the bumper file that says 2022 container because, let's face it, I wasn't going to just rehash the bumper for a new year. It's gonna be it's a solid intro. I think it's a solid.
I think so. Well, I'm excited, Tim. The boys are back.
Yeah,
they're back in town.
No green screen for you. You've got your collectible figurines behind you.
I'm definitely kind of reworking my setup here. I have my standing desk all set up here for my for doing my lecture videos, which I'm also back on track doing. So,
wait, you're doing back on track doing lecture videos as opposed to live stuff?
Well, I do some live classes, but also have to do some lecture videos every week because college is back in session, Tim. I'm back to work.
Already? Oh, man.
The vacation is over.
Sorry to hear. My daughters do their science in a virtual classroom type thing. Mm-hmm. And I think they record. It seems like it's the same teacher has a couple different classes because there's a couple different times you can go and do the sign up for the class. And it seems like one of them is recorded. So if you miss it, you can replay the live one. But you're saying you do just lectures without an audience for some of your classes?
Lectures without an audience. Oh, as in like pre-recorded lectures that I post. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So
I teach an online intro to website design course. So that is an asynchronous course that we do not meet. And why is my head like floating off to the side here? I don't know. Is that the same thing, or is it just my browser?
I don't know. I don't see your head floating off to the side. Now you're out of the screen. Everybody who's listening to the podcast can be like, "What are they?" I
don't know what's going on. It's like it's a very weird setup here this morning. But yes, I record pre-recorded lectures, and then I then post. The students can watch during the week to kind of introduce some content and to do that. So, but then I do other classes during the week that I teach live with the students through Zoom and everything like that. So,
and so you use Zoom for all that.
But I use mostly, but I'm mostly on campus too. So I teach like 6 classes. Full load, Tim.
So out of 6 classes, how many are on campus?
4.
Okay.
So I'm on.
One is async.
Yes, one is asynchronous that I teach on Wednesdays. We meet Wednesday afternoons, and then the other one is that Intro to Web class, which we do not meet, but I still have to produce content for and review student work during the week.
And you do that one remotely. Do you do that from here or from your school office?
No, I do that from here. That's why I have this new setup, which I'm still working the kinks out of because apparently my new Linux, which I did take a new computer from school that I have set up here in my office to have like a secondary computer just for doing lectures and video recordings. And it worked pretty well during the week, but now I get online with you and then everything kind of just falls apart. So,
well, that's the magic of Dev Friday.
Yeah,
that it doesn't matter how prepared you are, you're not prepared because you can't prepare for Dev Friday. Is it the Linux box? Are we still rocking?
I'm
Linux
still on Pop
everywhere?
OS. Absolutely, Tim. Right. I've gone off away from Linux, so I'm still there, but it's still working the kinks out here, especially when it comes to doing video streaming and doing video recording. It can be a little bit tricky because I think that's definitely a little bit more smoother on Windows or possibly the Mac. But yeah, I love Linux as my primary developing operating system. I don't think I'll ever go back. So
I'll have to see if I transition to doing like my normal meetings and everything from my Linux box instead of my Windows box. I'll then have to see how difficult that is because I do imagine it's probably has a little bit more hoops I'd have to jump through, but we'll see.
So how have you been? I know we haven't been able to do this show for the past 2 weeks. We've had a little bit of a break, some family stuff going on, and also school starting up. So last week I had some professional meetings on Friday that they like to force us faculty to go to kind of sit us down and tell us how we should be good faculty at the school. So I did that last Friday. And but how you been?
I've been surviving so far. I guess the new year started.
Has ChatGPT taken your job yet?
No, not yet. Not yet. We'll see. The kids love it.
Oh,
I don't know.
really?
Were we talking about? I don't know.
Well,
I can't
you
remember the
asked,
last time we talked.
yeah, the last show, which was, I guess, the first show after the New Year. I can't remember
No,
because I know
no,
it's
we
been
didn't
2
even do
weeks.
it after the new
We
year.
didn't. Wow, it's been that
This
long.
is the first show of 2023.
So yeah, because before or in December, because what ChatGPT was released around October, November
Yeah,
timeframe,
yeah, yeah.
and then finally the world started discovered around December, I think, and then it became like a hot news story into the new year. And I know you mentioned it to me, and I was like, yes, I've heard about it. And I took a look at the website, haven't created an account yet to really kind of play with it. But after the new year, okay, I did it. Especially, it was interesting leading up to the semester. I started seeing, a lot of academia posts about it. And then having the professional meetings for my school last Friday, faculty were starting to freak out about it. I was like,
Oh,
"Whoa,
right.
this is
Yeah.
this is kind of crazy." And I was like, "It's just a fact of like, wow." Usually, it takes them, I'd say, a couple of years to really worry about or talk about technology. But they really started to freak out about the fact, like, because in academia they're being public
That's-
like students are using it to create essays, to
Yeah.
write papers.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So
And I've had it like when I was showing the kids this, and I like it was like write an email to my professor explaining that my homework is late because my dog ate
That's
it. And
great.
it wrote it. It wrote
Yeah.
it. And then I was like explaining that I'm going to miss a couple classes because I'm going to be at a winter camp, and it wrote that. And then I said, my second oldest was like, have it write an excuse because I can't make it to class because I was kidnapped by werewolves. And I was like, I said that, and ChatGPT is like, you know what? You probably should not lie about why you're not going to be at school. It is better to be honest.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't write that for me. But then I just said, okay, write a first paragraph of a novel where a young girl is kidnapped by werewolves. And it did. And then it's like, write the second paragraph. And it did. And then now my kids just want to read books written by AI, apparently. That's
it was that engaging.
It was actually pretty good. I mean, it wasn't like, what I want to say. It's what you would expect from a natural language model that's been trained on a whole lot of
Books,
lot of data.
some
To say
websites.
that, I can synthesize things. Now, if it kept going, would it have a plot line that was cohesive and made sense, and it was like the arc of whatever? Maybe not. I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to see. But did the paragraphs, like in just that, it would give me an opening paragraph to a book with this context? Yeah. It was like that seems legit, and not the best in the world, but it doesn't seem like it was. It doesn't seem like it was written by. It doesn't seem like it was written by a computer, right? It doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like, oh no, I don't even. This doesn't even seem like a novel. No, I could definitely see that being the opening to some novel.
I totally agree about the
really
language
fascinating.
model part of it. Yeah, how
Yeah.
how intuitive it is to just to process the messages that are being returned as a human. It does a pretty good job of returning good, intelligent, readable messages back. I was curious about it because when I was starting to prep my classes, and then I started to actually poke around with it. I was like, I'm just curious because I know the faculty's freaking out about it. Could I create course content with this?
Oh, you could so much create course content.
And
with that.
but I started to kind of play with it. I say, okay, I was like, describe to me what JSON is. And so the return that it got back to me was super, super technical. It was good. It was accurate, but it was
Right.
it was super technical. And I was like, this is not something, especially JSON for my students would be more. Well, I am teaching it in my advanced web technologies class, which I know is a terrible name for a course.
Advanced web technology.
But it's one of the final courses that my web development students take, which we
feel
deal
like
with.
that's a course
We
that's
deal with very
Department of
advanced
Defense.
web technologies in this class. Hey Tim, you may be asked to do a guest lecture for that class, so don't laugh at it.
I'm not going to mock it. Not going to mock it.
But I asked him because I am going to be covering that in 1 week, and
Yeah.
I was like, could you describe me what JSON is? So it gave me back 2 paragraphs, and it was a good definition of it, but super, super technical.
Did you ask it to make it simpler?
Yes. So this is my process. So I said, okay, describe to me what the JSON is to a college student. And so I was like, okay, that's a little better. It still was a little bit technical.
But did
so
you,
I was
okay,
like,
wait. But did
No.
you do it as a conversation though with it?
Yes.
Because I've seen people take prompts and they'd be like, "Oh, that was great, but could you drop out the part about?"
Oh, okay. So what I did was I kind of worked back the intelligence level or the skill level. So I said, describe to me
like
as
I'm a 5-year-old.
exactly. That's what I got to. So describe to me as a high schooler, as a middle schooler, as age ranges, right? So I think the lowest I went down to was 12 to 14 or something like that. or actually, no, I went down to 8 years old. 8 years old did like a birthday cake birthday party kind of analogy to JSON or something like that.
Did it make sense?
It kind of did, but it's like it was changing like the first paragraph to really be approachable to that demographic that I was trying to set up the definition for. So
think how Jason would work
was
with a birthday cake.
I don't. I can't remember. I should have actually saved the responses so I could tell you. Yeah,
there's icing in between. That's those are the curly brackets.
But it was interesting, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna take time to do this now, but it is something that, yeah, I'm definitely gonna look into. And I was talking to my students about too, because I was just curious if they've heard about it during the first week of class, because I was talking about in my web design class for copywriting. I was like, copywriting or using stock photographs. And I was like, yeah, this is something I'm looking into, because this is what the world's talking about now, is how creators with like that I would be used to using in these types of projects with like copywriters or photographers, how are they going to deal with this? In a sense, because, this is work that's being generated, especially from a copy standpoint. It's so easy. I could, and me, Tim, ridiculous. I have the application. I'm not going to mention because I keep pitching it.
Sitebuild.io?
No, I'm not going to mention it. I'm not going to mention it. But once I started playing with it, it's like, oh wait, whoa! I can just build a function here. When I'm going to be drawing out my text boxes, and I need to have copy. Oh, just tell me what kind of copy you want to have in here, and using the API of ChatGPT, you can just plug in text. I was like, whoa!
It's crazy. I saw one example where someone said, write an email to a new customer for AWS that recently had security issues with their other provider, and it went through all this detail, and you're like, if I am a like an account manager type role, well, there you go. I mean, yeah, I'm going to go in. I'm probably going to edit it a little bit. Yeah. But I could give it more information. A customer named Jim who has 2 kids, likes baseball, and their company, deals with this. They just recently had some security breaks. They've moved to AWS, and it'll give you this email that seems like, oh yeah, you've highlighted what is important to me. You've brought in some analogies based off of what you know about me. It is ridiculous. And there's people that are now calling themselves prompt engineers.
Or narrative engineers. I've heard that term.
Oh, narrative engineers, because they know how to Did you see the copyright case? I don't know if we talked about this.
That is something I wanted to talk to you about too. Is I think that's what I'm concerned about, because I started thinking about, how can I use this in projects? Because I do think this is, it's going to be, this is going to be the new cloud hosting. I think developers do have to embrace it. Not just ChatGPT, but then it's going to evolve. Like Google's going to release, whatever they're working on behind the scenes.
Well, Google's scared about it because it's essentially a search engine that answers your questions.
But I think they have their own kind of AI behind the scenes. They haven't made public, or they haven't made commercialized version of it yet. But I'm sure that's going to come out. So, but there's going to be all these different AI platforms that we're going to have available to us. That's going to be like ChatGPT or better. It's going to definitely evolve and become much, much more usable. And to the extent of the applications that it's going to be able to integrate with is going to be great. But from a copyright standpoint, or from a, what's the word? Plagiarism? I don't know. Or just kind of,
especially with the image generators,
accountability of where the content is being generated from, because all this AI is just generative, right? So it's just taking all this data that exists on the internet, or, stored books or video or audio, and then basically just making new revisions of it, new versions of it, mashing up in a sense. So, but is there some, from a legality and a copyright perspective, how does that work? So if AI, writes a letter, but that letter is generated based on 10 other or 100 other letters that it's analyzed, then does that matter?
And how different is that from you and me reading, ingesting information, and then doing things with it?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a difference. I mean, I strongly believe there's a difference, but it's one of those. It's a really interesting question, because I know the image generators are getting faced with that. Like, you've absorbed information that was not intended to be used that way, and now you're creating derivative works that are close enough. It's a little harder to see it, I think, with the text, but with the image generators, you're like, but that's a part of my picture. That's almost part of exactly what you ingested.
And you mentioned the case. Are you talking about the Getty? I think it's diffusion.
I'm not even talking about that. The copyright case that predated all the lawsuits that we see going with like Stable Diffusion and what is it, Midjourney, and some of these other generators. It was someone who created a comic book that was illustrated completely by, I don't know whether it was Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or one of those models, art models, and then I think the U.S. Copyright Office gave it a copyright and then was taking it back because they were saying, well, you can't copyright something that was generated by AI and not you. It's not yours. And the artist's argument was exactly, I'm a prompt engineer. Like it was created by me because I know how to craft the prompts to get the imagery that I'm looking for this comic book. It's just all, to me, it's fascinating because from my little world, right? Those who've been in presentations that I've given know that a lot of times they're illustrated, and I would hire an illustrator to illustrate them. Well, wouldn't it be cool if I could just tell AI, hey, let me tell you, and almost, and this is something I'm sure I could do with one of these models. I don't do that type of programming enough to know how to set it up and train it and all that. But I'd almost want to say, give me a body of work from an illustrator. I'll pay them to give me, and now learn their style, and now let me ask you for specific things that are generative off of that, and just like, oh yeah, give me that same kind of person, but change some characteristics around them because I just want to illustrate a different person, and I want to be wearing this type of jacket, and to have that persona, and then just give that to me so I can work and quickly, as opposed to having to hire someone to do things that are, once you've established the look and feel, are pretty much just generative anyway.
Well, if you think about just art and designers, how they learn, that they look at other artists, other artists and designers from the past, what they produced, and then you basically make derivative works from that. It's reality of what it is. So it's like, I don't know. Like it is like if somebody's going to copy, let's say, a style of a designer and make a new design from it, it's still going to be their own design. But yes, they do have to reference on some level that either inspiration or knowledge of how to design or draw the lines, the colors, or the shapes the way they did. It's going to be, they have to reference it from somewhere.
And I'd still argue that, humans have an element of creativity that is not just a learned model. And so we add more than, there's something else that we add to it, but we certainly do imitate and learn from other creative works. Yeah. So it's a weird place to be in. And it's like, I actually have a use. Somebody just published a kid's book. I forget what exactly it was, but I think it was based off of, I think it would use ChatGPT to write the book. Again, and it's not like just like you just told Chat. I don't think it was just, hey, ChatGPT, write a kid's book. It's write the story, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and in the fashion of, or in simple language, or give it all those prompts, and you get something, you're like, that's pretty good, actually. And it is very similar to what you would tell a copywriter. Go give me some content around these topics. I want you to highlight these important things and make it flow as if it's a narrative that would work as a kid's book. And then they get that back, and then they went and illustrated it with Midjourney or something like that. And then a day later, it's on Amazon as a digital book, and 2 days later, it's in their hands because Amazon has that print-on-demand service. And you're like, wow, what have we done here exactly? So it's a really interesting thing at this point.
Yeah, especially once programmers or scripters automate that too. Yeah, saying let's okay. So I have this database of ideas. And if I could build a model of making suggestions around these ideas and provide like a process around it, you could automate. So produce me these 10 books or 10 videos and have those released one every week or one every month, and just have it scripted. And so there you go.
Yeah, and once we get better virtual, I've seen ads for the, hey, I'm a virtual AI that companies use for training and stuff like that, like a virtual person. That's pretty close to, once we power that with language from something like a ChatGPT, virtual illustrations from one of these I don't even remember what they call the generative art models, but one of those, and then throw it in an AI generated avatar and put the illustration behind you like you're giving a presentation. It's like, okay, wow, read the internet and then tell me about this topic. No, make it fit in 40 minutes because it needs to be a presentation.
I totally agree. As a professor, I totally support the idea of putting me out of work.
I mean, that's kind of what we're saying, right? Except for the
Totally,
fact that you
totally agree. It's
cannot
going to happen.
engage.
It's
And
going to
what
happen. Yeah.
where I really see it is it's your one class that you are doing the videos of that you don't meet in person
Yeah.
because and this isn't so here's the thing where it's not a bad thing, right? And this if you I don't know if anybody has watched my TED talk, but my TED or I should say TEDx talk. It wasn't actually a TED talk, but a TEDx talk. I make the point that yes, technology puts people out of business. So embrace the things that humans are good at,
Yeah.
that technology is not good at. And what we're seeing is, okay, technology is good about distilling a large amount of information and presenting it to you in a way that you can understand in a non-interactive form, right? Now, ChatGPT is interactive where you can ask it questions, but where where's it going to replace you? It's could totally what I just described there with the avatar and stuff could totally replace the pre-recorded content, but cannot necessarily replace the human interaction where you can actually look at people in the eye, right? That's the I can give talks virtually like this. I don't like it, but I can do that. And I think I can give one that has still maybe the same feeling of enthusiasm coming from the speaker side. But
Yeah.
there is something about looking out across an audience and seeing people's eyes because you know whether or not you're connecting. And then you can change based on just the feedback they're giving you. And you know the same thing in a classroom, right? A classroom's different than over Zoom. Because Zoom, you can kind of see if people are paying attention or not, but it's hard because they're never looking at the camera. They're always looking at the screen. So, but when you're in a classroom and you're looking at your students, you can tell, is this connecting or not? And then when it's not, you can say, well, let me try a different tact because if I am a domain expert on this topic, I can change a little bit. I can try something else to see if I can get it to connect there. So to me, it seems like that's where we focus because if you just want to distill information down, make a 45-minute presentation where somebody just regurgitates what they know, a computer can do that.
Well, it all becomes, I agree, totally agree. The value of face to face and to be able to learn from somebody that's next to you is totally
Yeah,
valuable. And I think that's
yeah,
where there will still always be value from, face to face style education. But it also, depending upon the student and how, let's say, how fast they want to learn or get through the program, there are going to be other ways to evolve, or this, a platform is going to evolve to give the students the information faster that can be
yeah,
presented in the classroom
yeah.
and also be patterned to each student individually, which also is super, super interesting. So that students come into my program. It's a really, really big variety of technical levels of coming to the
Right.
program, where students who have, they played with, video games and computers in the past, but they've really done none programming. But I have other students who programmed a lot in high school and they come in. So it's hard to meet everyone on that level kind of at the exact same time. But if the content and
If
then
you could feed
is
the
generated
AI,
for their skill
yeah,
level, that it
and their
definitely
background,
speeds up
right?
their learning process there. So
Because the exercise you went through, like, give me, describe JSON to a college student.
mm-hmm.
Well, what about describe JSON to a JavaScript developer? That's going to be different than describe
True,
JSON to a Python
true,
developer.
true.
You're gonna use different language. You're gonna pull different things from the language that they already know. So if you go into it saying, all right, here's a student who has taken this course and this course and has programmed actually in this language, now explain to them whatever it is the class is trying to explain because you know how to communicate with them. That's really interesting. Have you seen like I think they're probably more like on social media and things like that, the ads for the books that they'll make for like your pet? It's like a story about your pet. You describe, oh, we had this type of dog and it was this coloring, and then they'll like do a one-off book that's like the adventure of Bob and
Mm-hmm.
whatever the dog's name is, and you
Yeah.
give them just some day. It's almost like fill in the blank,
That's
type
been,
of
yeah, I've
book.
seen that. Like there's like you'd have like a book printed custom for
Right,
somebody, and you
right.
just fill in the main kind of piece of information they're looking for, and they just use that as the
Now imagine if
model
they
for it.
just start pulling in more information
Yeah.
and then using something like ChatGPT and saying, all right, so this is a person who's worked in this industry, is this old, has had these many pets. This was the name of the pet that they really loved, and this is something that they liked. They took trips to these different places, or they really like to knit, or they really all that information. And now say, write me a 10-page simple book with a story of their adventure that ends in this type of way, and like I can guess that those companies that are making those one-off, customize your own book or experience, they are probably looking very hard at what they can do
Yeah.
to elevate the product that they have to something that is way more engaging than what they've even been able to do. So
Yeah, I'm a total supporter of this technology. I know a lot of people are afraid of it. That are the white collar knowledge workers who make their living sitting at a computer and producing work. But I think we have to evolve with technology. Technology is naturally going to get better, and it's also going to get exponentially better. It seems like that's what's happening. So we just need to learn with it, evolve with it. I think then you mentioned, you'll figure out new ways to work or new ways to produce the work that we're doing, or honestly maybe not produce the work that we're doing and do something else, right? So I think that is going to be the responsibility, I think, of everybody to take. Because I find it interesting when I was hearing the faculty complain about this and be up in arms. There's one faculty member who was like, it's this guy who always speaks his mind during faculty days. He said like, oh yeah, I don't believe in this AI. I think it's inferior. I'm not worried about it all. But I bet in at least 1 year, possibly 2 years, he's going to come back and he's going to say, we need to ban this. We need to lock this out so students cannot access this, on campus. So I think they're going to have to, and I think too, as a faculty member or as a teacher, I knew it's something you should definitely be aware of and be concerned about. I think because I think teachers always have to deal with plagiarism or taking your students taking the easy way out. But you could structure your assignments, what you're asking the students to do around these things, and I think then it could be good. Just like I was talking about with my students too. Like if they have to write copy for one of the websites I'm asking them to work on in the class, if they use a source like ChatGPT, I'm totally fine with that. Because I asked them to say, okay, if you're going to take copy or text from one website, as long as you source it, tell me where it's coming from, then I'm fine that you got it from someplace else. But I'm fine if you use these tools, because what I'm really looking for is the design, right? The layout, the composition, right? So if you want to, bring in images or text that's generated from someplace else, I'm totally fine with it, because as a designer, you still need to know how to use that content. You still need to know how to lay out the content, which ChatGPT doesn't do automatically out of the box. Actually, I think it was the DALL-E image generator, which I did some tests with that. So I was just curious, like, design me a sneaker website. What came out was just by saying that was a mess. It was just a blurry, pixelated, like gobbledygook. Like it was very, very strange and weird, almost like an abstract painting of a website. It's very, very weird. But
design me a sneaker website in the style of Pablo Picasso.
Like we're talking about the narration. I know if I did it step by step, saying, okay, design me a logo with this style, with this, with these types of shapes, colors. And then kind of build out the design from there, work on kind of specific parts of the page. I bet it could definitely get there. But that, once again, that takes some skill to know what you're looking for, to know the elements that you're looking for on the page. Just like if you go into Adobe XD or Photoshop or Illustrator and you need to design a comp of a website, you kind of have an idea of what you want to see on the screen, but you still need to use the tool. Right, you still need to use the box tool to be able to draw out the shapes and to be able to use your fills and your strokes, and you need to know how to use the tool. Well, the tool's just changing now. Like it could be like a narration tool, which honestly I think is kind of cool. So I definitely think it speeds up the process and be able to for designers or creatives to make work.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound like I'm just trying to plug my TEDx talk, but this was I don't actually have the content like that I wrote, but I'm looking actually at the transcript. But my closing was to my 3 daughters who live in a world that I can only imagine. Like, what would I say to them is the context of where this conversation is going. Embrace the creative, the human aspect of everything you do. Find that thing that takes the inner inventor, the tinkerer, the creative soul, and focus on that, because the rest are repeatable. They'll be solved, they'll be automated, and eventually maybe by you. Focus on why, then what, right? Don't focus on why a computer, my transcript's a little weird. But focus more on the why than the what. A computer can add 2 + 2, but you need to know why you want that result.
That's a good point. The why.
And then the last one was those that simply want to teach you the answers, avoid. Those that want to ask you questions, embrace. And then finally, love problems because they mean you're needed. Solve them creatively. That was
totally agree.
And that was, what was that? 2014. That was a while
Prophet
back.
Tim, look at you being so prophetic
Well,
there.
I mean, if you look at my Twitter profile, it does say that I'm a futurist. So
I can predict the future before it gets here, Tim.
there you go.
That's
There
it.
you go. So yeah, but that's it. I mean, because like what you're saying is all those things are things that are the tedious part of work, right?
Yeah.
You know, oh, just
Yeah,
give me give me three different design ideas about, you know, a logo. Okay, spit those out. Now I actually do the creative part where you look at them and you understand why. And then how does that impact what we're going to do? Or, you know, write me this copy. Okay, that's kind of
Yeah.
the tedious thing. The interesting thing is, well, what copy do you want for this type of person? And then eventually that's going to be the tedious thing. So we have to keep
Yeah.
on figuring out what is the thing that needs solving, because once it's just a process, it's just a process.
And to think about how what U.S. knowledge workers have been dealing with over the past, I don't know, 10 to 15 years with outsourcing. You know,
Right.
with, you know, they've been always been at a competition with, you know, how fast they can produce work and how much it costs to do that here in the U.S. compared to doing it in India or Indonesia or wherever, you know, wherever a company is going to be outsource their either the creative work or just doing copy work for, you know, whatever they're outsourcing there, or any type of business process. But that's always been an issue. And now, in a sense, if they learn the tools that could, these generative tools to produce their work, it actually kind of takes away the need for outsourcing. You can do
Oh,
it
yeah.
yourself faster
Yeah.
and cheaper,
Yeah.
probably.
And then you just need to know how to harness the technology to get
Yeah.
the results that you're after. And that's that's a different thing. That's a problem. We don't know it yet. Look at that. Don't be like, oh, they're taking away the thing that I can do. Well, if the thing that you can do is just repeatable, well, maybe
Yeah.
you should find something else that you want to be solving.
And I thought it was interesting too. A lot of people made this analogy of the, you know, this is kind of like the calculator for the written word. You know, saying so that if people wanted to generate text just like we could, or solve problems through text, just like we can solve, you know, mathematical problems with using a calculator, speeds that process up. And I was thinking about that too. Thing, you know, when the calculator, and like I said, I had to do some research. Saying when the calculator was introduced, before that, were people smarter from a just figuring out math on their own, or just by paper and pencil, or using the abacus? Like, or
Yeah,
or those manual tools that they had. And then once a calculator came, did that make us smarter? Did that make us not, you know?
it definitely allowed us to do things in a, what do I want to say? Be able to. I mean, that's why we design computers, because we want to do math faster. Because it would take too much time to do the math. It took us too long to get to the answer, and to have a rapid advance, we needed to get to the answer faster. So, oh look, machines can do that, and then yeah, they gets bottled up in a thing that you can actually have in your desk, as opposed to a thing that took up the entire warehouse, right? And then that's the game changer, because everybody has it in their hands. I would argue that it's probably not the best to compare like a chat GPT to a calculator, as much as say compare chat GPT to like Excel, where it's not the calculator, but it's the framework that you can use to feed it your data, get your answers. Because the calculator, you still have to be like that.
You still, yeah.
It's the fact that you, normal person, not even developer, right? Like you find people that are power users in something like Excel. They're not developers, but they know how to relate things and craft things in such a way where I put the thing that my inputs there, I get exactly the outputs that I want. So if you want to talk about, are they, you know, an Excel engineer was the first prompt, you know, that same concept of, what are you? I'm a prompt engineer, or whatever the other, you know, the other name people are using. Well, Excel is like a data engineer.
Yeah.
You know, if you say, hey, I know how to craft it so I can get out of it what I need to get out of it. Well, how would you do that with Excel? Well, I wouldn't, because there's so many interrelated calculations. This goes there, that goes there. We base this off of that. Like, I couldn't do it without that tool. I feel like that's more in line with what you know, what this would be. Not so
Because
much
you
the
because you still
calculator,
need to know how to use the tool.
Right.
You know, even if the tool gets you to an answer faster, you still need to know what is the answer you're trying to get to, and then how do I use the tool to efficiently get there.
but
I find
that's
it
the why. You
thinking
know,
back,
it's not so much about 2 + 2. It's about knowing why you want that answer.
my many years of teaching, I always encourage the students, if you don't know anything, go to Google. Right. So go to
for
search
sure, yeah.
engines. You'll be
Yeah.
able to find it. But you'll be amazed at how many students do not know how to use Google. That do
Oh,
not know
that's
how
true too.
do not know how to use the appropriate questions to ask it to get the results, and also how to process the results, to know which results are good, which results are bad. I know that comes through experience, But that's also a skill that you have to force yourself to learn. And I find that so many students just are really, really bad at that.
And it's weird too. Like we talked about this a while ago. Like the predictive text or the let me fill in as you type, your keyboard in your phone that auto completes, or now even in Gmail it'll be like, oh, you start typing and it's like, I think you mean this, and I'm like, yeah, that's actually what I meant. That's crafting maybe our communication, our person to person communication. It's influencing. It's reducing it to something that may be either simple or something that is predefined, right? Something that is more in line with what a machine thinks than maybe what a person would say. Though most of the time it's probably exactly right because it's based off of predicting what you have written in the past. But at the same time, when you're saying like, well, how do you use Google to ask questions? We are getting good at asking a machine a question. And is that even changing how we think about things and how we communicate? Because I mean, as a developer, of course we know how to ask machines questions. Like, what's the top 10 skills of a developer? Naming things, right? Understanding loops and Googling the problem.
Or reading Stack Overflow.
Reading Stack Overflow, right. So it's all about how do I find him? Exactly what you're saying. How do I craft a search to give me back the actual information I want? So we've learned how to talk to machines, and has that actually impacted the way that we talk and communicate to each other? And this is just going to be more of a question in that direction, because now we're going to be both asking questions of AI generators to generate content that then we feed out and we say, oh, this is what I'm going to claim as my own. And other people are going to read it as if I wrote it because it wrote it and I changed some things and put it out there. So now people aren't really reading me. They're reading a machine's rendition of what human communication should be. And how are we as humans changing the way we behave because we've injected machines into that conversation?
And thinking about developers, because this is a developer show, so we should probably
go back to that. Yeah,
should probably talk to them.
Yeah,
but thinking about developers, how when Google Copilot came out when was that?
GitHub Copilot.
GitHub. Sorry. What did I say? Did I say
Google Copilot? Yeah.
Did I say Google Copilot? Okay, so we were talking about Google in the first. That's why.
Yeah.
So when Copilot came out I think I started using over the summertime. And at first I was kind of like, I don't know, kind of feels a little weird and bizarre and strange. And I was like, I don't know. But then the more I used it, I was like, whoa, I can actually do a lot more faster. But what I also saw with it though, was that you can't just use it out of the box. You first of all have to learn what is it really good at in the code that it generates or the code that it suggests, and what is it not good at? Because sometimes it'll suggest really, really bad code that you shouldn't be using. Or it'll suggest blocks of code that you need to do some work on and go and modify to make it adapt, make it fit your program. So it still takes a developer to do that. So that's why I think as developers, I think we still need to learn these tools and embrace them and to learn how best to use it, because they're not perfect. Maybe one day they will be. I don't know. Maybe when you say, okay, make me a podcast website, it'll just be done. It'll just do. But for now, I think as these tools evolved and as developers, we need to learn not only how we can integrate them in our projects, but also how we can use them from a day-to-day to solve problems. I think that's definitely something that we should all embrace as developers.
Have you asked ChatGPT any programming? I know you asked about Jason, but have you asked it to give you like actual code? Because it'll do that.
Yeah, I did it for just some basic HTML and CSS because I was curious for my course to see if I wanted to do some examples of how to do it. And I think it's okay. Yeah.
So now you're just going to have to be asking yourself every time a student submits a project, you're going to be like, how much of this was generated by ChatGPT?
And I was thinking about that. I was like, and like I said, I don't know. Like like a lot of my assignments, there's both a technical component and a design component. So if they give me a well-designed site that I'm going to talk, one of the things that we do as a teacher, I could talk to them about it. Okay. And we do critiques, we do reviews, just like you do code reviews with developers, right? And we've been talking about this when you do talk to a developer and ask them to describe their code and talk about it. Can they do it? Explain why you did it. If they can't explain it, if they can't talk about their process, then you could kind of get a hint of like, okay, well, maybe you got this code from someplace else, or you copied this design from someplace else and you just kind of passed it off as your own. You could definitely figure that out within 5 minutes.
So it's going to be the same thing, just different in that. Yeah. Instead of using a Stack Overflow homework answer, it's going to be, well, was this sourced from an AI code generator,
Yeah.
or did you actually write
Well,
it, or
that's what I say.
did you borrow it from somebody else on
And
the internet?
students
Yeah.
know, students been Googling and finding answers to Stack Overflow for many, many years. And you could also know that students are really bad, or young programs are really bad at taking, copy and pasting Stack Overflow answers or code and just putting into their applications and just thinking about just expecting it to work. Or when they start seeing bugs from it and they don't know why, how to fix them. I'm like,
Ask another question.
yeah, it's another question. Yeah.
Paste
I
another code clip.
copied this answer from Stack Overflow. It didn't work for me. Can you guys solve it for me?
Right, and copy this code. Yeah, Stack Overflow driven development. That's the best kind.
which going back to the content standpoint, it's interesting the fact that like Stack Overflow, which is owned by, what's the big company that owns it now? They sold
I don't
it
know.
to
They sold it to somebody.
why that they haven't produced their own Copilot in a sense, or their own AI based on all the content that they have. Because
There's
I think
a lot of information there.
because I think that is going to be the key going in the future about, there's going to be a bunch of different AIs. And it's interesting that Microsoft seems to be buying up every one of them. So maybe Microsoft will rule all the AIs.
Microsoft's going to try to buy ChatGPT, right? Like I thought I saw that they were going to.
Well, right now they're doing a partnership with their cloud hosting with Azure, and so they're basically going to give them free Azure services and also give them be able to utilize ChatGPT in like Microsoft Word and their applications. So they have like a partnership.
The new Clippy.
But they're basically going to be owning them in a sense. So thinking about how like there's going to be many, many AIs, and it's really going to be about the content of the platform of the AI. Right? And like I said, Google, why do I keep saying Google Copilot? That's so incorrect. GitHub Copilot, which is owned by Microsoft now.
Microsoft Copilot, yeah.
Which with GitHub totally makes sense because they have so much code. Right? And there is, are they just pulling public repositories and not private repositories? I don't know. Just like is they say the ChatGPT isn't connected to the internet and not pulling from internet websites, or maybe only very select open websites they're pulling from, but really how much, where are they pulling it from, or from DALL-E? Where's it getting all the image content?
They are totally like it knew. Like I asked it questions about conferences that, like I asked it questions about PHP Tech and things like that. It's crawled a decent amount of the internet.
Which I was wondering, that's why I think they should probably become a little bit more public about. I think they should have some type of their own search of saying, okay, could you type in this domain name and could they acknowledge, is this domain name part of their model?
Right.
I think they need to provide some transparency around that, because I think it's going to get to be a little bit icky.
I think though where they've said is they're not actively crawling the internet, right? They're not actively.
They're putting in specific websites, right? That's why I thought they were training it based on what they think the website should.
Yeah, I think there's that, but like my understanding of some of the content that I saw when I was just playing with it is the idea that, it's as of a certain time it's been trained. It is not actively getting more information. So if you ask it about something that happened yesterday, it doesn't know about something that happened yesterday. Yeah. So that's probably the next step, and I'm seeing some people create things that are like ChatGPT, but it will actively crawl the internet. So when you ask it a question, it will actually go out, use what it knows, and then go out and try to find anything new and report to you on that. So it becomes a research assistant essentially. Like, oh, this just happened yesterday. Read everything you can on this and then distill it down to me so I know whatever I need to know about it. And that, I mean, if you don't think that that's going to be very useful, it certainly will, whether you're talking about just understanding current events, or I can imagine that plus high frequency stock trading could be very interesting.
Machines already run that.
Yeah, but I mean, then apply, and I know there's already AI on there, but like I don't know how quickly that reacts to anything but say trends in the market versus actually reading announcements about companies, reading.
Oh, there's triggers. Oh, there is.
I know, but I do, and because this is a part of the industry that I don't think is very open about what it's doing.
Yeah.
But like, is it reading? Are people reading a company's quarterly statements and their filings with the SEC, and then that results in certain things that trigger trading, or is AI reading those?
No, I think because like I said, I did some little bit of day trading in my past first summer to kind of learn more about that world. And no, they have it's totally scripted in a sense where like if there's a news headline, there's basically like keywords. So if they see a keyword pop up, and what they can do micro kind of size trades where they can kind of test it out, and then if it gains traction, it'll just escalate from there. So they're constantly, the trades are based on the current news that's being fed through it, but then they do small little step to saying, okay, is that really a viable piece of news to actually move the market up or down? And then based on the speed of how fast they can trade, they can figure that out, pretty quickly. Because it's like how many, it's like the micro, like how much they can trade within a second is kind of crazy.
It's ridiculous.
Microseconds, yeah.
But you think that these models will become even more useful to that, or in that industry? That's
true. Actually, I haven't thought about that.
Instead of keyword matching, it's like, why don't you absorb all of the news in real time and tell me what's going, more than just like, oh, headline, this was in a headline and it's a negative sounding headline.
Or maybe about, because I think, like I said, I think they're already doing that, but I think predicting the future, like predicting like a month from now, based on this news that's coming out now, what's going to happen, where the market's going to be in a month or 2 or 3 months from now, I think that will definitely get better.
Right, because you could feed it. Yeah, if you feed,
and then the history of like based on the historical information based on certain events that have happened, how the market's moved based on those events, and analyzing that with current events. Yeah, you can definitely do that.
Right, as long as you know when things happened in the past, then you can build a predictive modle. Yeah.
Skynet,
brave new world.
I don't know where the machine's going to take over. They're definitely going to take my job. May take your job. You and I will just be podcasters on a lone island.
Podcasters? What are you talking about? There's going to be
we'll be the last 2 human podcasters, and then maybe we'll finally have an audience.
Here's the thing: I'm going to be like ChatGPT. Write me a podcast with 2 developers talking back and forth on a Friday about PHP and APIs, and then I'll just feed that off to Amazon Polly, and it'll sound like us, and have them interrupt each other every once in a while. So
there's
you think they're not going to replace this?
The name is escaping me right now. There is a famous former developer, now runs his own venture firm. He has a podcast. I wish I could remember the name of it. I should have wrote it down. But what he said he's doing now with his podcast for like, I guess one episode a week or something like that, he's having a conversation with ChatGPT. So basically, it's going to be a podcast with ChatGPT where he will be asking ChatGPT questions, and it's going to be a conversation. He's going to do it like a conversation, like he's interviewing ChatGPT.
Okay, so it's going to be. I wonder, is it going to be real time, or is it going to be
it's real time. Yeah, okay. That's what he was going to say. He's going to record the podcast, release it, but he's going to do it live when he's recording the podcast to have a conversation, just like his podcast is interviewing people, and they like interviewing developers or entrepreneurs. But now he's going to just interview ChatGPT and see how it evolves.
It'll be interesting to see how he implements that. Like, is it going to be text? Is it going to be speech to text on his end, and then
that would be kind of curious. Yeah, that would actually be good because I know there's also you know about this a little more probably because of your. Do you do any text to speech in Phone Burner?
Text to speech, yes, sometimes. Like when we have to. I mean, it's not anything.
Because I've been hearing some examples that's gotten pretty good. I don't really do any work in that area, so I don't know about that. But it's but I know back in the day, listening to computers speak is kind of just really rough.
Why, Mark?
But now that how natural it sounds, it's gotten pretty good.
It is, and that's why they can have like those. What do I want to say? Virtual avatars for like doing. And I think the at least the ads I've seen for them are very much like, all right, you need to go through this type of HR, you have to tell people about your benefits. Okay, just throw it at this virtual avatar, which will make a decent looking presentation so people feel like, oh, I'm slightly engaged because it's a human, that's saying this to me, but it's not. And it's explaining to me whatever policies are, just generate that content. The reason why we can do that is because it has gotten a lot better. Because the audio sounds like a person, and you can animate an avatar to be very human looking, right? In fact, I mean, isn't it? I think, wow, talking about that, I believe it's Bruce Willis. Didn't he? I think he sold his image to I forget which studio, Because if you followed, I don't know that anybody's. I don't really follow. I just
I do follow Bruce Willis. I'm a big diehard fan, so
Okay,
yeah.
because he's retired from acting because I'm
Yeah,
not too familiar with what the medical issue is.
Yeah, because he has some health medical issues where he can't do acting anymore. Yeah.
Right. So, but as he's retired from acting, he's licensed his image.
Yeah.
So you could have Bruce Willis in a future film. It just will be AI.
Which is smart.
Right?
You can
Just be
still
like
get paid for it. Yeah.
that deep fake stuff like that one dude does with the Tom Cruise videos. And if I'm not mistaken, now the new Indiana Jones that's coming out, Dial of Destiny, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of AI, or should we say CG, or deep fake, or however you want to say it, going on with Harrison Ford. I'm thinking that there's a lot of him that's not actually him in that movie. But
So you think they're not
know.
just doing de-aging by making Harrison Ford lose a few years? You're saying they actually may be replacing him altogether. I guess for the
Well, no, I'm not actually saying that because it's like from a how it matters standpoint, like the deep fake guy, he puts Tom Cruise's face over his face.
Yeah.
But he still has to act like Tom Cruise, right? Like kind of very energetic about things that nobody's energetic about. And I think that it's the same thing with even the de-aging. Even it's Harrison Ford acting, but if you de-age his face, well, when did it become his face and when did it become a deep fake of Harrison Ford just being acted by Harrison Ford? In the case of Bruce Willis, I'm not saying there's going to be a movie that has completely virtual Bruce Willis walking through it. I think it's going to be a stunt double. Right, like somebody who has about the size in the presence of Bruce Willis going through, but delivering lines. He's just going to deliver. He's going to try to deliver lines as best he can, but it's going to be AI that delivers it in the voice of Bruce Willis. It's going to be AI that throws Bruce Willis's face, and it's not like you're green screen acting against nobody, and then boom, it's going to look real. No, I think there's still going to have to be somebody involved there. Whether that's actually the actor that then is de-aged, or whether it's like in the question of how much you de-aged Harrison Ford at some point, could you have used a Harrison Ford look-alike and got the same thing because it's no longer Harrison Ford. It's someone acting like Harrison Ford. So that is going to be. We're just reaching fascinating points with what we even think is real, because we used to think if we saw a video, it had to be real. Now it doesn't have to be real.
So what do you think is going to be the next evolution of? Because I remember like you talking about deepfakes. That used to be the news a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
when that became popular, and then now everybody's worried about ChatGPT and taking over the world and everything like that. So what do you think in the next year, the next evolution that people are going to be have their minds blown and start to question the reality of like what it is to be a human in this new generative world?
That's a good question. I feel like it's going to be. Well, I don't know. Like, I feel like there'll definitely be some convergence around all those things you just mentioned, where we have virtual assistants. So it's not what Musk promised, like, 2 years ago? He's like, by the end of the year, we're going to have humanoid robots that are going to be in your house, whatever he did, because stock prices were dropping and he had to give somebody a little bit more of a story of what Tesla was really going to do, or I forget what it was, but didn't materialize yet, obviously.
Or you're saying like human-like robots? So is the Tesla bot finally going to evolve into something that's usable?
That's not what's going to happen in my mind in the next year. But I think we're going to find that it's not everything that people are worried about with the deep fakes and the ChatGPT, right? Mm-hmm. What are people worried about with ChatGPT? Educators. How do I even know anybody ever wrote a research paper again? You don't. Good luck with that, right? Mm-hmm. Deep fake. Like, how do I trust that a video of a politician is actually that politician? Maybe it's a deep fake. Yeah, that's totally going to be a problem, but it's not going to be the problem, and it's not going to be the thing that kind of impacts our lives as much as we think it is. I think it's going to be more in line with now I have conversations with computers.
Oh, okay.
And they look like you and me. Like, it's not going to be your chat. You remember the chat bots? And there's still chat bots, right? It's not going to be the chat bot in your conversation in Slack that asks you questions. It's going to be the fact that you invite a personal assistant into your Zoom meeting, and they actually have a face, they have a personality, they have a character quality to them. You ask them questions, and when the meeting's done, they're like, hey, I just emailed you a summary of this meeting. we're already there. There's things that do the whole transcript, figure out what people said and committed to, and then have a summary of it. And that's great and useful, but we're going to then see that in the form, especially the more and more we are dealing and communicating like we're doing right now in video chat over, over a virtual medium, real people. There's going to be virtual people that just start popping in, and it looks real. It looks like they're in our office, and they're going to converse with us, but it's going to be a machine, and they're going to do things, and we're going to accept that.
So the personal interaction, that's definitely going to get more real.
I think so. So. We're going to go past the uncanny valley, and it's going to be like, oh, you're just talking with Bob. He's the chat bot for this room, and he helps us with everything that we might need.
So if I can't reach you, Tim, to help me solve my PHP problems, I could rent Bob to come help me.
Yeah. Virtual Tim. And then that's going to, like, when we talk about people that have large sums of domain expertise, if they can distill that down to a medium that can be processed in a model, then all of a sudden, yes, you did clone yourself, kind of, not really, but sort of. But
see, that's what I think as developers, I think like this is like compared to, this is like the new cloud hosting, how cloud hosting changed how developers create applications, or the speed of how fast developers can create new systems, new applications. I think this is kind of the new platform for that too. Where like, I think if developers embrace it and think about creative ways to implement new ideas or new solutions, with it, I think it definitely is really, really exciting.
I feel like it's just like, go watch the TEDx talk. I mean, that's what we. I mean, everything, all these things, like find.
You can take pride that you are the future futurist. So
the future futurist. That's right. Yeah. That's right. So we've talked about technology. I don't know. We've got a couple minutes left here. I don't know if I want to bring this up. Yeah, we'll do it. One thing that I find fascinating is, as a thought exercise, when we look at how technology has changed over just the last 100 years. Not even the last 100 years, last 50 years, right? Right? If we look back 50 years, maybe a little bit more, I'm trying to figure out when the dates on everything are. But we're talking about computers going from
it's crazy
warehouses to things you carry in your pocket, and what they can do, going from math to figure out where a rocket should go to get to the moon, to, well, what we're talking about right now, to understanding large volumes of information and being able to cohesively have a conversation with someone, right? We've done that in 50 years. Now imagine a catastrophic world event that takes away everything we've made. All right? Takes away everything we've made.
Which seems likely in the news, if you read the news or keep reading the news,
So it's all gone. There's no computers, right?
Yeah.
There's no, we're just, or if you don't want to think of it that way as a thought exercise, here's another thought exercise. We're on a Earth-like planet, so it sustains life the same way. It's just someplace else, and that's all we've gotten. You're there, there's plants, there's animals, so you can eat if you need to. You know what we've done. You know where technology has gone. But you can't do anything with it, right? Because when you think about how everything that we have is built on something else, is built on something else, is built on something else. The reason why we see technology blow up in the past 50 years is because we're looking at computing, and we're seeing what that has happened as we've built on. Think about machining. Right? How do we have machines that can make microprocessors? Well, because we have photography, because we have high-end, very precise machines. How do you make a very precise machine? With a slightly less precise machine. With a slightly less, all the way down to tools, all the way down to a hammer. But it takes so much time, and we're just seeing that now race because we've got so much that we're built on. Imagine what it would be like to have all the knowledge of where technology has come and what is possible, but to only have the resources you would find in a natural environment.
It's a very dystopian.
How long it would take to get back.
A very dystopian Tim view coming from you, I think.
No, it's just a thought exercise. Because think of how long it would take to get back to where we are. Because we look at it now and we look at how fast things are moving. But what if we reset it all? How long? How many years? 2,000, 3,000, 6,000? How many years does it take to get back to where we are?
Tim, is this a novel that you're talking to ChatGPT about?
I mean, I'm not going to say that I've asked ChatGPT to write this novel, but I'm not going to say that I haven't.
Well, I think it'd be a bestseller.
Next week, what we should do is we should just go to ChatGPT and say, give me 3 topics for a podcast for 2 developers on a Friday that would be engaging with an audience. I don't know. Do we have demographics on what audience we don't have? I don't know. Maybe we should talk about the audience we want to have, and
we should ask ChatGPT to get us an audience and
get us an
how
audience.
best way.
Yeah. Give us something that will engage with an audience that we do not yet have. So that's what we'll see what happens next week, if we have it next week. But yeah.
If we're still here, you know.
If we're still here.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's it for the show. Those of you watching live, you get this 2 to 3 seconds of extra.
And I was going to ask you something.